My name is Ahmed El Saadi. I am the Middle East, Africa, Turkey, Romania, and CIS Vice President for Splunk, a Cisco company, and been with the company for over 3 years. Been in the market for over 20 years of experience in multiple different hats and capacities, from infrastructure companies to security companies to cloud companies, and then with Splunk in the data platforms and analysis.
How has been your journey with Splunk?
It's been nothing short of fantastic. So in Splunk a few years back, we started addressing problems that had to do with cybersecurity threats for our customers, and how can we actually help them detect faster, unify multiple siloed tools into one tool to help them be able to address multiple challenging operational problems. We started with the cybersecurity because it was the biggest pain for our customers, and from there we started telling them, if we can do the same for cybersecurity, identifying issues before they become customer impacting, let's look into how we can do that for your IT services as well as for your observability to ensure your systems are running adequately, and we ensure that you don't have these issues that can help or that can lead into your business going down. In fact, a few months ago, we did a survey for our top 2,000 global companies in the world. And the cost of downtime per company was around $200 million. And when you look at these $200 million, the ingredients of them, you will find a quarter of that number almost is because of downtime. So their customers are not able to transact with them. So that takes away, I would say, a quarter of the 200 million number. And the other quarter is because of SLAs, penalties that they're paying to the regulators for their systems not being available. So you can say that 50% of companies' revenue losses result from downtime, result from security breaches and SLAs that are not being met on the infrastructure side and on the cybersecurity side. And what we do is we help them tackle this problem specifically by making sure we provide them the visibility based on a unified tool that is Splunk to help them make sense of any kind of unstructured data, which is a mandate and requirement for the world of AI today that we live in. So that's an example of what we do for our customers.
How has Splunk evolved since you joined 3 years ago?
So I see the world that we live in today as well as a changing world, right? So the company has developed the solution and has been built originally on machine language, which made it ready for AI adoption as a whole. So today, everything that we're announcing, for example, in GITEX has to do with how you manage your data. So first of all, the Cisco Data Fabric is something that we're announcing this GITEX, and basically it's a solution of how we can handle this vast amount of data, but instead of bringing it all to the platform and then analyzing it from there, we keep it at the edge, indexed and ready for them to be absorbed only with the relevant data that we need rather than with the big ingest. And you can imagine this has an economical side, a benefit to it, has an easiness of work to do with the data, and allows us, instead of having to replicate the same data for multiple use cases, to use it at the source for multiple without replicating it, right? And that's a big cost saver and a more efficient way of operating. The second part that we're announcing that is very interesting is our Agentic SOC. So this is using AI agents in the Security Operations Center. So you can imagine these analysts today that had to do a lot of simple triage, identifying which is more important threat to deal with, to have that done automated for them and help them focus on the most important threats that require intervention from a human rather than to be stuck with the basics of the task. So agents are being deployed in the SOC, and this is going to be available on-prem and on cloud this November, as well as our Agentic Observability. So the same concept, but for the operations team to become their assistants in identifying issues with the infrastructure and the application codes before they go to production and then hit any customer potential downtimes, as we said, to eliminate the costs that are being paid. So a lot of development has been happening throughout the years. I think the great thing with the Cisco acquisition is a fuel of innovation and making sure that the innovation happens at a very rapid pace. So a lot of those announcements happened this year, thanks to a lot of Cisco investments that have been poured into this, as well as completing the story with the Cisco infrastructure that is required to manage the world of AI today, from bandwidth perspective and speed perspective as well.
When it comes to agentic AI, are the solutions you're developing platform agnostic, or are they designed to work within a specific ecosystem?
They work with each other, right? The most important thing is to make sure that we understand the identity of these agents. Are they allowed to speak to each other, and they are allowed to speak about what? So the context. So do they have the authority to speak to one another? Do they have the context to speak to one another? And where does the line or the fencing happens around what functions? And being able to see that and measure that in a systematic way. So this exists whether it's a Splunk solution or with anything. The most important is to make sure that we have this identity access management part into it, as well as the operation part around it as well.
So, can this technology work with solutions from other vendors?
As we continue to develop this, it's going to be a world of agents talking to one another for certain tasks, right? So in the end, Splunk has been a very big supporter of something called open telemetry. And open telemetry allows us, for example, to understand any kind of data that is not proprietary, and it's been leading this consortium. So naturally, we are open. But I think governing this openness to make sure that we get the benefit out of it without getting the risk, I think is the effort that is being put right now into the systems that we do.
Which key industry verticals are driving your business growth?
That's a very good question, Sanjeev. So the more regulated the countries are, the more they're in need of technologies that can help them meet regulations and avoid SLAs and penalties and cyber attacks. And obviously, the more the economy is thriving in the countries, the more they're subject to these kind of cyber threats or attacks, and in their all different shapes and forms. So the banking sector has always been a leading sector for us. The public sector has always been a leading customer for us. The service providers have been a leading customers to us. The manufacturing, because all of those have the same requirements. Now, the one sector where we tackle, but through a different go-to-market, is the small, medium customers, and we tackle them through what we call the managed service providers, because this allows them to scale, and sometimes the services that they require are not as hefty as the larger organizations. So we work through them to reach our customer audience and ensure that they take on tasks on behalf of their customers as well.
Regulations are a major challenge for operators globally. How do you integrate compliance into your systems while helping local players meet these regulatory requirements?
It's a very good question. So first of all, we work with the majority of the regulators to understand what they want to do, and also offer our services on how these can be done, right? And when you look at these frames of partnership, it's a framework where we come and say to the regulators, what are you trying to achieve? Sometimes it has to do with the operations. Sometimes they have certain SLAs that they want the customers to receive from the providers in the banking or other sectors. And sometimes they want, for example, to manage security for a certain number of customers, right? So, for example, initiatives like SOC of the SOC, right? So these kind of initiatives. And also where we work with them is the human capital development. So for this all to work, technology can be as great as it gets, but you need the people, and then you need the process. So if you put these three together, this is kind of the work that we do with the regulators. So this is one side. And then we take this regulation and we embed it into the system so that we make sure that the customer has an easiness and an easy way to achieve the compliance needs. With a click of a button, they can get a report. And now even with the Agentic AI, you can ask the agent to produce that report and it gets produced to you immediately, because they know what do they need from data set to look at, and what does that report in terms of format, headlines, in the way that it has to be written so that it can be available to the regulators immediately. Before, what used to happen, Sanjeev, is that this was a process that used to take days and sometimes months when the tools were siloed and the customers were not able to achieve their data alignments as a whole. So now it's a click of a button that we do.